Hi, this is Marty Gold, and this is my wrap-up commentary on the 2023 Manitoba provincial election. As it turns out, the Tory campaign, you could say it ran out of gas, but it didn't have a lot of gas to start with. There was fuel available, but they weren't able to burn it efficiently. Some of the good news, some of the positive news about the province's economy, about fixes to healthcare, about investments being made, about employment being strong. Those strong economic factors were put out early and simply didn't catch on. Part of that is because the media was completely disinterested in any possible indication that the province had rebounded subsequent to the pandemic restrictions and that credit would be due to a Conservative government under the stewardship of Heather Stephenson. The flip side of the coin on the campaign is the NDP, while their message earlier was certainly scrambled and right-wing, in the end, the reassurances that various policy initiatives gave to people that they wouldn't get hit in the pocketbook, at least in the upfront kind of way that they're used to under the NDP in Manitoba, under the likes of Greg Selinger previously. They didn't see the NDP platform as a big threat to their pocketbook and decided that when looking at other factors, including the kind of fatigue that comes from a government after two terms, people decide to go the other way. There's other factors that I haven't had a chance, quite frankly, to sit down and try to crunch. One of the reasons is that the time that I had allotted to try to dive into the numbers, the polling numbers, Elections Manitoba wasn't very cooperative with reporters and researchers such as myself. But surely, and I've heard this anecdotally, including from listeners of the Great Canadian Talk Show podcast and people who have followed my commentaries here with winnipegtribune.ca, there are a number of people that are conservative inclined who stayed home. I'm surprised by that because usually I don't hear people that are conservative stay home and don't vote, as compared to other people who are, relatively nebulous politically. There is indeed turmoil or dissatisfaction that stems from the Pallister era through the leadership convention to replace him, through the present day. And so there are disaffected Tories out there, and I think there's probably more of those than there were of disaffected NDPers, although there are definitely people who are left-leaning and left-wing that will never, ever, ever support the likes of Wab Kinew, Nahanni Fontaine, and the other left-wing radicals who so effectively camouflaged their genuine political leanings under the guise of being nice, centrist moderates. We'll do the big things together, and then the small things they'll ram down your throat. That's the way it goes with NDP governments. And so the Tories put into a rebuilding mode. Rochelle Squires pronouncing that she's done with public life. Not the most popular figure within the Conservative Party herself. Evidently, Kevin Klein telling Hal Anderson on CJOB, or really not telling Hal Anderson on CJOB whether he had plans to try to run for the leadership after his loss in Kirkfield Park, loss of his seat in Kirkfield Park. I don't know, Tory-wise, which of the rural MLAs would have the strongest standing if they want to make a leadership run. Abhi Khan's an obvious factor in this regard. And in terms of people that are outside the legislature that might try to take a run at the leadership, I can't see, realistically, I don't see anybody moving in from and I'm not saying it won't happen, but I don't see anybody moving from the federal field provincially, and I don't see anybody moving up from city council either. The Tories, it's been said they have an identity problem. They do have an identity problem in that very often they fail to identify who the people are that are desperately want to vote for them and want to be able to support them. But repeatedly in different political campaigns, I hearken back to the McFadden campaign in 2011, as well as in this campaign, the Tories simply can't find the bullseye when it comes to those kinds of moderate voters abandoned by the disappearance of a Liberal Party. That they'd rather waffle to the right themselves than waffle to the left, and they just didn't find the presentation very appealing, or the party, some parts of the party platform very appealing. I think people are in for a rude awakening, the way they were in Alberta under Rachel Notley, when modern day socialists and identitarians and woke Marxist academics start taking over government. Ugly and awful things happen. All sorts of laws start getting proposed and passed, and orders in council and such things that attack their political enemies. Their political enemies, first and foremost, being those in rural Manitoba that don't support the NDP and didn't return any substantive numbers of them to the legislature. I want to speak in this final commentary before I conclude about Dougald Lamont and the Manitoba Liberal Party, which has been in the wilderness since the fall of Sharon Carstairs from the position of being the opposition leader in the shock election of 1988, I think it was, putting a scare into the Gary Filmon-led Conservatives. And then it was just downhill from there. I think she went from 22 seats maybe to 7, and I think they might have had 5 once, and otherwise the party has never had any substantial presence in 30 years now in the provincial legislature, and it's too bad. I felt especially bad, I admit this, for Dougald Lamont, who has always been an extraordinarily decent and engaging interview with me from the day I met the guy. He loves to talk, and sometimes he, like myself, he talks in circles a little bit, which may be why we got along really well. And it has nothing to do with politics, but on a personal level, he respected independent media. He understood the power of independent media. He understood the role of independent media. And one of the roles of independent media is to not focus on the clatter between the two main parties, and to give people a chance to hear what the alternatives are. And I certainly try to do that, not only with Dougald Lamont, but as well with Dr. John Gerard, who for a number of years was also my MLA. And there were a couple of times where issues or stories would come up that were very difficult, involving healthcare and particular issues, medical system issues, the public trustee. And I saw John Gerard affect solutions for people in weeks, and in one case in a day. Family and a bereaved family, and they were getting a runaround, and John Gerard, when he found out, he took action. And I don't know if in my lifetime, I don't know if I've seen or known a more respected member of the legislature. I say that because some of the old time names, they're before my time. But John Gerard, defeated in River Heights, and it's sad. It's also sad in that there are a number of times where people on the outside of the political process looking in thought that there were times that John Gerard could have been invited to help a sitting government deal with healthcare issues and healthcare problems, because he had the perspective of a brilliantly skilled doctor who understood these things from the inside. And it's unfortunate. I know people think this is crazy. I'm not saying the Liberals should have been elected to form government at any point, but John Gerard, I think, had a lot more to contribute when it came to healthcare, and I believe that this problem would be in less trouble when it comes to healthcare if at some point John Gerard's insight and advice have been taken advantage of. And this is the problem with when partisanship goes beyond what is truly the best public interest. And so Lamont moves out of public life. Dr. John Gerard moves out of public life, as do a number of other MLAs who lost their seats, joining those who decided not to run again and retire. I, however, am not retired. I'll continue to be issuing the Great Canadian Talk Show podcast through actionline.ca. I am hopeful that I'll continue to pop up here from time to time with winnipegtribune.ca. The role of the independent media is important. Those of us in this game provide headlines, details, insight, interviews the mainstream media aren't going to touch. There are times there are stories out there the media won't touch. for a year until they're forced to, because the media in Toronto is all of a sudden doing a story about your owner being sued for something. And so the independent media, looking for an angle, looking for an edge, looking to get ahead, it's not even taking risks. It's just reporting stuff that deserves to be reported and not focusing so much on, ribbon cutting and adding letters to various acronyms to identify factions within a community and identity politics and all the rest of it. And so I'm asking you in this final audio commentary to support independent media in Winnipeg. You need more of it because the corporate media is completely captured. And there are certainly good stories and good reporters, but they are vastly overwhelmed by ideology. They're overwhelmed by ethical issues. They're overwhelmed by fiscal realities that have just pivoted what's left of news operations in a very dreadful direction in Winnipeg. And that's why you don't hear things that are news and that are important to the community, and why politicians ram stuff through, because the public doesn't find out till it's too late what's being planned to affect them, their families, their neighborhood, etc. So my final message is, by all means, please continue to support independent media, such as what I produce through actionline.ca and certainly winnipegtribune.ca. And I hope to be able to once again be in a position to contribute here at winnipegtribune.ca. And I appreciate the feedback that I've gotten and the compliments I've gotten with regards to the commentaries, the columns that I've issued here through this website. In closing, I remind you of the infamous words of a guy named Peter Warren, who used to get right down to business. At the end of every program, he would say, as I do now, at the conclusion of my audio commentaries on the 2023 Manitoba provincial election, thank you for listening.